In 2004, Cave Story was unleashed onto the internet as a free downloadable game created by a fella who went by the name of Pixel. Cave Story had an exciting story with an unforgettable soundtrack and characters. Above all though, Cave Story was a rock-solid Metroidvania-style game that was incredible to play. The game has since been ported to nearly everything imaginable and released officially with enhanced features on Steam and Nintendo platforms. 10 years later, Studio Pixel returns with a brand new title called Kero Blaster, which recently made its way onto Steam. In Kero Blaster, players take the role of a frog who works for a company called Cat and Frog. The frog is transported to different landscapes to eliminate threats that are blocking their transport terminals. That's about the extent of the story in Kero Blaster, and really, that's about all you need. I'm sure if you've watched all the other reviews up to this date, you'll notice I'm kind of a sucker for pixel art games. Even if in a lot of cases it's a lazy attempt to cash in on nostalgia, I can't help but like it. This especially works when it's done well, like in, well, Freedom Planet. Kero Blaster is charming enough with its sprites. There's nothing truly groundbreaking here, and yet there doesn't really need to be. In the one department it arguably should, Kero Blaster plays it fairly safe with the graphics. I'd like to think it's less worrying about how the game looks and more about making a good game. I can't say for sure, but bottom line, the art is appealing enough but isn't going to blow anyone away. The soundtrack, however, is anything but average. Kero Blaster has just as memorable of a soundtrack as Cave Story ever did, with intense boss themes, catchy overworld music, and ominous cave tracks. These all give Kero Blaster the right level of atmosphere it needs. In turn, the graphics don't seem so bad since the music winds up tying everything together so well. Far and away, the boss music is my favorite track in the game, with the right level of tension and danger interspersed in. These are the kind of chiptunes that remind you of what it was like to crush robot masters for the first time in Mega Man, or take down aliens in Contra. And speaking of which, Kero Blaster plays a lot like those old run-and-gun games, similar to how Cave Story played like a Metroidvania game. There are some similarities between both games, namely in how weapons can be leveled up to be more powerful, and that instead of basic shots, enemies have health that can be taken down based on the power of the weapon that you're using. The similarities stop there though. The upgrades in Kero Blaster are thankfully permanent and require a single payment from the coins that the player collects from killing different monsters. Monsters include simple things like snakes and fish to more sinister looking creatures that are the manifestations of the mysterious black things, as the game calls them. Also refrigerators and falling light fixtures. Kero Blaster is, for all intents and purposes, a straightforward run-and-gun game. And when I say straightforward, that's literal. Unlike other shooters, holding down the fire button in Kero Blaster will make the frog continue firing in that direction until you let go. By doing so, Kero Blaster becomes similar to a shoot-'em-up game, such as R-Type, with the focus being more on dodging the bullets rather than just doing damage. It's an interesting mechanic that works very well with the level design, and allows players to plow through enemies without having to turn their back. The flip side, however, is that you can only aim in 3 directions: left, right, and up. Thankfully, this isn't much of a problem, since the different weapons and upgrades tend to help alleviate the lack of directions to fire. Since it looks, sounds, and plays like a run-and-gun game, Kero Blaster also has the difficulty of one. The issue I have to an extent is Kero Blaster's backwards difficulty curve. More and more games seem to have this, where it starts off hard, but by the end, you've got so much health, powerful weapons, and backup that the challenge seems to slowly strip away. With the option to upgrade health and weapons, the overall difficulty of the game decreases, especially the bosses. That's not to say Kero Blaster is a walk in the park, mind you. As I said earlier, Kero Blaster plays just as much like a run-and-gun as it does a shoot-'em-up. You'll need to play smart in order to survive, which means skill is rewarded. Bosses are the biggest example of this, as many of them are constantly throwing projectiles and bullets in some form or another to kill you. And for the most part, it feels fair. Of course, there's a reason I said for the most part. There are times where the chaos can take over and you'll lose yourself in between everything exploding or catching fire. What's more, the frog is very floaty. This was also something that happened in Cave Story, but here, it's a much bigger issue. There aren't a ton of precise jumps, but it always feels like the frog hovers a bit more than he should. This occasionally makes jumping over obstacles and bosses a pain, especially this boss right here, which in turn highlights another issue: the jetpack. Jetpacks are awesome. No doubt. Kero Blaster's jetpack allows you to double jump, which should be cool. It makes sense how it works. If you jump while moving forward, it excels the frog more and gives him upward momentum. Even still, the fourth boss just sucks with the instant kill move if you don't time it just right. There's some other instances that this awkward floaty jumping can get you killed, but this one boss is the most prominent. Kero Blaster is also a fairly short title. First playthroughs can usually be cleared within a few hours, and that's assuming you'll lose all your lives and have to restart entire levels, which is something that Kero Blaster is fairly forgiving on, since you only need to beat certain enemies and mid-bosses once. And even after death, you wind up retaining all the coins you gained in a level. What I'm saying is that you can beat Kero Blaster in one sitting. But at $10, you really can't go wrong with Studio Pixel's newest title, even if there are a few bumps in the road. Kero Blaster harkens back to a time where all you had to do was kill everything on screen, and little to no narrative tying it all together. Studio Pixel managed to mix a little bit of everything into Kero Blaster, and as such, have created another outstanding game. One that might even make Kermit proud.